Chapter 1. Cambridge, Massachusetts, 1896. The ichthyosaur skeleton at Harvard's Museum of Comparative Zoology was incomplete, but the fish lizard was one of the first to be found on American soil in the state of Wyoming, and the American University was understandably eager to put it on exhibit. Venetia Fitzhugh Townsend Easterbrook stepped closer to look at its tiny teeth, resembling the blade of a serrated bread knife, which indicated a diet of soft-bodied marine organism, squid perhaps, which had been abundant in the Triassic seas. She examined the minuscule bones of its flappers, fitted together like rows of kernels on the cob. She counted its many rib bones, long and thin, like the teeth of a curved comb. Now that this semblance of scientific scrutiny had been performed, she allowed herself to step back and take in the creature's length. 12 feet from end to end, even with much of its tail missing. She would not lie. It was always the size of these prehistoric beasts that most enthralled her. "I told you she'd be here," said a familiar voice that belonged to Venetia's younger sister, Helena. "And right you are," said Milly, the wife of their brother Fitz. Venetia turned around. Helena stood 5 feet 11 inches in her stockings. As if that weren't attention-grabbing enough, she also had red hair, the most magnificent head of it since Good Queen Bess, and malachite green eyes. Milly, at 5 feet 3 inches, with brown hair and brown eyes, disappeared easily into a crowd. Though that was a mistake on the part of the crowd, as Milly was delicately pretty and much more interesting than she let on. Venetia smiled. "Did you find interviewing the parents fruitful, my dears?" "Somewhat," answered Helena. The upcoming graduating class of Radcliffe, a women's college affiliated with Harvard University, would be the first to have the Harvard president's signature on their diplomas, a privilege roundly denied their English counterparts at Lady Margaret Hall and Girton. Helena was on hand to write about the young ladies of this historic batch for the Queen magazine. Venetia and Milly had come along as her chaperones. On the surface, Helena, an accomplished young woman who had studied at Lady Margaret Hall and currently owned a small but thriving publishing firm, seemed the perfect author for such an article. In reality, she had vehemently resisted the assignment. But her family had evidence that Helena, an unmarried woman, was conducting a potentially ruinous affair. This presented quite a quandary. Helena, at 27, had not only come of age long ago, but had also come into her inheritance. In other words, too old and too financially independent to be coerced into more decorous conduct. Venetia, Fitz, and Milly had agonized over what to do to protect this beloved sister. In the end, they decided to remove Helena from the source of temptation without ever mentioning their reasons, in the hope that she'd come to her senses when she'd had some time to reflect upon her choices. Venetia had all but bribed the editor of the Queen to offer the American assignment to Helena, then proceeded to wear down Helena's opposition to leaving England. They'd arrived in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts at the beginning of the spring term. Since then, Venetia and Milly had kept Helena busy with round after round of interviews, class visits, and curriculum studies. But they wouldn't be able to keep Helena on this side of the Atlantic for much longer. Instead of forgetting, absence seemed to have made Helena's heart yearn ever more strenuously for the one she'd left behind. As expected, Helena began to mount a